Hey guys, welcome to KMG. I'm Kevin,
And I'm Mitsuha.
and today we are going to be going over the history of Rareware.
Yeah, today we're going to be talking to you guys about the amazing gaming company that is Rareware, uh, a bit of history on them, some games they've created, their impact on the gaming industry, where they are now, and pretty much everything in between. This is a very amazing company. I know Kevin and I both love them very much,
Oh
so this
yes,
should be a very fun episode, especially considering this is our first regular episode, so this will be fun.
the
Of
founding
what?
history of Rareware. Rareware, if you didn't know, evolved from the company Ultimate Play, the game, which
Okay.
was
Yes.
something that, or it was a gaming company that made arcade machine games, if you will.
Yep. Man, I completely forgot about that.
And that company inspired Tim and Chris Stamper, which were the founding fathers, if you will, of Rareware or Rare. I will refer to it as Rare from here on out.
Yeah, most people call Rareware is the full name, but most people call them Rare. And when you try saying Rareware as many times as you've had to, you realize that it's a lot easier
Try
just to
saying
say
that
Rare.
5 times fast. That may or
Yeah,
not
no,
be a shout out to our After Hours podcast.
oh yeah, yeah, definitely. If you're okay with non-PG cool podcasts, definitely check out KMG After Hours, which is our talk show. But anyway, back to your regularly scheduled program where we talk to you about Rare. But yeah,
Nice.
anyway, if you say Rareware enough times, you'll realize it's terrible to say. If we had bloopers of every time we've screwed it up, we could fill like an hour segment just of that. So we will just refer to it as Rare for simplicity and the sake of our mouths.
So Rare there had multiple critically and commercially successful releases like Jetpack, Attic Attack, Saber
This is
Wolf, and Night Lore.
Was this the NES or SNES that those were on? I cannot remember.
Arcade machines.
Oh, back that far. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, not
Jetpack.
just
They
arcade machines, but like
Yeah, those types of games. I know that.
NES game. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned Jetpack right there. That I believe led to Jetpack Gemini on the N64. That's a continuation. That's the same series, is it
That
not?
did. Yes,
All
it
right,
did.
yeah. That's one of their very popular N64 games, of which they have many. Oh boy, let's cover those while we're at it. That's why most people care about Rare as a company is because of what they did for the N64.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. Aside from Nintendo, Rare was definitely the biggest publisher on the console, and many people would even go as far as to argue they contributed more to the N64 than Nintendo themselves. And I would find it hard to argue with that if it weren't for some select titles from like, series such as Mario and Zelda, but they definitely were great. They gave us games such as Diddy Kong Racing, Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, Donkey Kong 64, the cult classic Conker's Bad Fur Day. Everyone loves that. We cannot talk about that here, though. Let us not forget GoldenEye 007, Perfect Dark, and many others as well. They were a huge player when it came to the N64, and the console just honestly would not be the same without them on it.
It really would not.
If I were to ask you right here, right now, what your favorite Rare game is, what would you have to say to that?
Battletoads for the Amiga.
Yeah?
Yes, Battletoads is one of my lifelong. I say that like I've lived for a long time.
Yeah.
One of my childhood favorite games to play.
See, I need to play it. I have yet to play Battletoads.
We will get
But
into that some other time.
yeah, somewhere recently, I think it actually might have been today, I believe I heard someone talking about it. So it is definitely a popular game.
They did just have a re-release or a
That
reboot of
might
the
have been
original.
why. That might be why I was hearing about it. But see, my favorite. Oh gosh. No, no, it's not hard. I was thinking about it like it's a difficult choice. No, hands down, it is definitely Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Oh
Wish I
yes.
could get more into that right here, but I cannot. If you're familiar with the game, you know why. We will have an episode covering that eventually, but this is not the place for that. This is a family-friendly podcast today, if you will. So we will avoid the gem that is Conker's Bad Fur Day. but I will at least acknowledge it as being my favorite.
Acknowledgement is all we can do for it as of right now.
Yep, and that does it no
Sadly.
justice, but again, we'll cover it eventually.
Rare was established in 1985.
Oh, I was gonna say 58. That's before
Yeah,
video games existed. That is super cool.
I
85
wish.
makes more sense though.
Yeah, I got it mixed up.
Yeah.
Its main goal was to reverse engineer the console and investigate codes for Famicom games to learn more about the console's programming. With successful results, the company decided to sell the Ultimate brand to US Gold and cease development for the ZX Spectrum in the following year. For you guys that don't know, ZX Spectrum was supposed to be a standalone console from any other thing that Rare was going to put out itself.
You talked about how they were reverse engineering arcade games and things like that. That almost reminds me, oh, this honestly might have been the same company. I could be wrong. If I am, people are gonna certainly let me know. Um, but what's this series? You know that series on Netflix about gaming? What's it called? I don't remember the name of it, but there's a series on Netflix that talks about like the history of different things involving video games. And there was a company on there. There were people from a company on there talking about how back in the day they used to do exactly that. Like they would reverse engineer these old arcade games and modify them and sell them as modified versions and sell them as their own games. And that's how that company got its start. I don't think it is the same company.
It is
It
not.
could be, but that's definitely very similar, it sounds like. So it seems like a lot of people definitely caught on to the fact that they could do that back then and monopolized on it. And apparently it worked.
Oh yeah, it does. It ROM hacks, if you will. That's what
Yeah,
they're
dude, those were
typically
the
called.
OG ROM hacks.
Oh yeah.
And look where that industry is now. We have ROMs everywhere on the. I mean, some companies, Nintendo, don't like ROMs too much. They're kind of strict about that. But I know a lot of people in the gaming community personally do enjoy ROMs. I'm somewhere in between. I would rather play the authentic thing, but ROMs definitely are a key part of gaming, so
Oh
I am
yes.
glad they exist. And we have people like that to thank for it.
S-
They pioneered the way to that.
Speaking of Nintendo, which is Famicom's
Hmm.
manufacturer, Nintendo claimed that it was impossible to reverse engineer the console like Rare has been doing.
Oh,
Using the
really?
information the Ultimate Play the Game team acquired from Rare, they're not the same thing because Rare's inspired by them. The
Mm.
team prepared several tech demos to show them to Nintendo executive, excuse my French, Minoru Arakawa.
If I could see how it was spelled, I could help you there, but I have no idea.
Yeah, sorry about that. I butchered his name, excuse my French. He was impressed with their efforts. Nintendo decided to grant the Ultimate Play the Game an unlimited budget for them to work on games for the Famicom platform.
Unlimited. Oh, wow.
And if you didn't know, because I didn't state this earlier, Ultimate Play the Game was a European developer team.
And see,
They
that's
were
pretty cool back
European.
then. Yeah, that's cool back then because I know the main developers you saw back then were like you saw Atari. Atari was American, and then you saw, I believe it was American. It was
It
right.
was,
I
yeah.
believe. All right, making sure I get all this right because we need to sound professional. Yeah, but and then you had Nintendo, obviously, which was Japanese, and so those were like the two main companies back then, at least. And so it was always cool to see these other developers like Ultimate Play the Game and stuff that came from areas other than America and Japan because those were like the two tech giants. And to this day, it still kind of stayed that way. So it's always cool to see foreign developers outside of those two nations working on successful video games.
It's beautiful to see that. It it
Oh yeah.
really is.
Mm. Yeah. The more people we can get involved in that, the more people and the more countries, the better.
The more creativity or creative ideas flow through for video games. So we're
Yeah,
not
and
just rinsing out a clean dish.
yeah, that's why, we've been talking about the N64. There are who knows how many 3D platformers on there. I don't even know off the top of my head. I know I own at least like 4 or 5. There's Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, Donkey Kong 64, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Rayman 2, more that I'm forgetting right now. There's so many, and for the most part, they all have their own identity. They don't typically feel like direct clones of each other. Even games like Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, which are in the same series, feel different enough to stand alone. And so when you have such similar ideas like that, and yet you're still able to make them diverse enough to be unique and give each player a different feeling so that they don't all feel like the same game, like you said, that's an incredible thing, and they definitely managed to pull that off wonderfully.
Oh yes, they pulled it off beautifully.
Especially when you consider that most of those games I listed right there are titles made by Rare, so way to go, Rare. You definitely owned the N64.
They really are an amazing company.
Yeah, and unfortunately, as we said, the N64 was definitely their peak, and after that, they went on to keep developing a bit more after that. They made a few games for like the original Xbox, and around that time, they ended up being bought out by Microsoft, which kind of led to the company's decline. They didn't do a whole lot after that, or at least not a whole lot mentionable. They did work on the Viva Pinata series, which I don't hear a whole lot of people talk about, but I'm at least familiar with that.
Sea of
And then,
Thieves.
yeah, today Kevin was telling me, you and I were talking, Sea of Thieves is made by them. I had no idea until you said that earlier. I couldn't believe that. I don't know who I thought it was made by, but that was pretty impressive. So every once in a while, Rare will still put out a good title. I know the Rare Replay is another example, but even then, that was just like a compilation of some of their greatest hits throughout the decades.
I will
But
say, they are working on a new game currently.
are they? What is it?
Everwild.
Okay, and that is
I am not sure
okay.
as of
But we
yet.
do have something that they're working on.
Yes.
All right, we'll definitely have to cover that when we get because that's interesting. Because our audience doesn't know this, you do. So obviously, about a month or so ago, maybe a month and a half, I got like really heavily into collecting for the N64.
Yes.
Hence my recent growth in my love for companies like Rare. And so now I'm really committed to them as a company. I'm really interested in learning about them, and the fact that they do still occasionally pump out games, like we mentioned, Sea of Thieves, things like that. That's cool. And so if they have a new game coming out, I definitely want to follow the development of that.
From what I am reading on right now, it is a cell shaded game that looks to be inspired by
Ooh.
Breath of the Wild. It
Oh, so it's
is.
Instant Impact.
Yes.
Oh boy, man.
That's another thing
Do
for
we
another
need another
time.
Breath of the Wild clone though after Genshin Impact?
But Genshin Impact pulled it off well.
It did. I haven't heard anyone complain about its microtransactions yet, surprisingly.
No,
So
because they're
that's
not
good.
needed.
No. I still need to play that game too. But
It's really
anyway,
fun.
so
Uh,
you said it was a cell shaded game inspired by Breath of the Wild. I for one love cell shaded games.
it's an
Maybe that's just because of
RPG
Wind
open
Waker.
world.
What was that?
It's an RPG open world full of magic and
Ooh.
yeah.
Ever since like the days of Wind Waker, I've always loved cell shaded stuff. And Breath of the Wild too. They did that on there not too long ago. Wait, was Breath of the Wild 2016 or am I remembering that wrong? Tell me it's not that.
2015, I think.
Oh my, it's dude, I feel old. It's 5 years old now. There is no
Oh,
way.
my bad, 2017.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I didn't even want to fact check that. I was too scared. Man, that's crazy how long it's been though already. But at least we're getting a sequel. But
Oh,
anyway,
yes.
that's pretty much it. That's the basic history of Rareware as a company. You've heard it all. You've heard how they started, their peak, how they grew to that peak during the days of the N64. The 90s were wonderful for them. Their eventual decline due to their buyout from Microsoft, and where they are now. One last thing I do want to mention though is they did, like we said, they had a long run on Nintendo consoles. They were very close to Nintendo for the longest time, but then they did get bought out by Microsoft, so that kind of stopped. However, anyone that's following the gaming scene recently knows Nintendo and Microsoft are kind of buddy-buddy right now, so who's to say we won't see more games like their new one on a Nintendo system in the future?
That'll be exciting.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. So before we wrap this up, I think I've said about all I have to say. Kevin, you have anything else?
I do not.
No?
No.
That means we've done a good job at covering Rare. Rare, if any of your developers are listening to this, thank you so much for everything that you've done.
You gave
for
us childhood.
Yeah, you were our childhoods. Even though I'm mostly just discovering you now, you were still my childhood. You know what? I will alter my memories of growing up to have you in them. You're that good. but, but yeah, on the off chance someone from there is listening, thank you very much. You've done so much, not just for us, but for gaming as a whole. You guys revolutionized several genres. I mean, where would the first person shooter genre, one of the biggest these days, where would that be without GoldenEye? Where would platformers be without games like Banjo and Conquer? Where would racing be without Diddy Kong? People, shut up. I know Mario Kart exists, but let's pretend it doesn't. So
Exactly.
they've had such a huge impact. They are incredible, and it's been an honor to talk about them today. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you next time. Stay saucy.